title of our panel, Accelerating Student Success. So I think we can all vote that we could move a little faster on graduation rates and persistence. I feel like we could, everyone in the room that thinks we can move a little bit faster on student success.
Yes.
Wait, okay, so everyone that thinks we're doing great at student success? Okay, so there's some abstention there. All right. Charles and I were joking, no jokes. We're gonna keep it good. All right, so I'm gonna kick it first to Dr. Larry Miller. And so Larry is Vice President of Learning and Workforce Development at Greenville Technical College. Had a wonderful question yesterday, so we're just gonna start with that, so we're excited about that. So Greenville Technical College boosts the local workforce and drives economic growth, contributing to $627 million and supporting over 8,500 jobs in the county. Got your stat there. So I wanna start with you and kick it off hard. What skills do you think are gonna be required for the economy where AI is pervasive?
Yeah, so great question, Celia.
We didn't practice
Real
this
small
or
one.
anything.
No, we didn't. I would say just on workforce development issues, AI is rapidly changing the way that we're preparing students for a career that is just emerging. So I think we all saw that survey that showed 70% of recent grads were concerned that they didn't know enough about AI in their first job. So we're trying to fix that really quickly. One space that I'll just share with the group is we're working in spaces like the welding industry, which is evolving pretty quickly to include AI. We've got a massive shortage of welders in the United States. We produce 1 for every 4 that we need. So that's a big concern. We need 400,000. We're producing 100,000. The way AI is changing that job is that the welder is no longer welding. The welder is now managing the equipment, so they're more of a repair technician, quality control engineer. They've got to learn how to read and interpret the data out of the system. Those are all new skill sets that we didn't have to prepare our welders for, as a concrete example, in the past.
Fantastic. All right, Isaiah Freeman, senior at Virginia State University.
Woo.
All right, so class of 2025, congratulations. Just finished up an internship at Google, but I want you to talk a little bit about the ways that you're using AI as a student. You know, obviously not representing all students that we said, but kind of how are you using it, and how are your peers at Virginia State University using AI right now?
Yeah, so I can say personally is that most of the time when I'm using generative AI, because I'm majoring in computer science, so I do a lot of work around creating ideas about software, because I like playing with things in order to help me learn them. And so generative AI has been a big help in helping like flesh out the ideas that I have, or the concepts of ideas that I have. And then as I'm working on them, knowing how to like correct them, how to make them a bit more efficient, how to make them more reliable to large amounts of data. And so I think that's kind of been the brunt of how I use generative AI. I can say for my peers, it's very similar with essays and with their own assignments around coding. I think there's kind of like a, I guess I call it a pitfall, where as you're using code to work on it, sometimes it kind of gives you a shortcut to learning things you should probably learn on your own. But I think it's about creating a mindset that makes it more constructive, where you're helping AI or getting AI to help you learn this thing, and then use that thing to implement the solution that you want.
Fantastic. All right, President Abdullah, president of Virginia State University, which is in the top 20% of performers in social mobility, U.S. News and World Report. Woohoo. So, also not bad at a basketball layup with the students on campus. So I think also need to call out Ryban Miner on our team, a graduate of the Virginia State University.
That's right.
Probably your alma mater. So, I've known you a few years. You like to do some radical thinking. So tell us about some radical thinking around student success and how that might be supported with AI.
Okay, and I wasn't sure I was going to say this. I think I said it on the moderated call. But I think I'm going to go ahead and say it anyway. I don't think that the modern system of education that we have in this country will survive AI. And I think that to see that, I think you just have to look at the history, really, of education in this country. The modern education system is really relatively new, coming out of the mid-1800s, out of Massachusetts, whether it's training teachers to be able to meet the new need of public education. Public education in this country is, again, a relatively new idea in the mid-1800s. We suddenly needed colleges and universities to train people for the Industrial Revolution and to make sure that every classroom had a teacher. We were training subject matter experts to go into communities that didn't have them. How do we survive that if the subject matter experts that my student is learning from is now on his phone? What is now the role of teachers? And if higher education mirrors that, in that now we're training PhDs to come to universities to then be the subject matter experts in institutions, how do we adjust to this new thing? It is the number one question that I ask myself as Virginia State University. Many of you did not know about Virginia State University before you sat right here, right? I am in competition to beat all of the schools that you know about. And so my challenge is, how do I get from here to wherever the new form of education will be using AI faster than the institutions that you know about? And I believe the first thing we have to do is to admit that the current model that we have will not survive this new influx of AI any more than our libraries survive the internet. So I'm just asking questions. If you got answers to those questions, please come and see me. I got a job for you. But I think that that's we now have to adapt very quickly to this new world that the students have already figured out, and to figure out how we can do it well.
Thank you, President Abdullah. So Dr. Sam Johnston from CAST, Chief Postsecondary and Workforce Development Officer. CAST is a multifaceted organization with a singular ambition: bust the barriers to learning that millions of people experience every day. So Sam, could you discuss the importance of applying the universal design for learning framework the organization is known for with AI tools?
Yes, thank you. I can definitely do that. Can I just first respond to something that I thought?
Absolutely.
So I really appreciate what Dr. Abdullah was saying about the education model not surviving AI. Another thing that I hope does not survive AI is the way we've conceived of intelligence in our entire system, from little kids all the way on up, because I think there's just far too many losers and not enough winners. And I think, I spend a lot of time at CAST. We work from what we call sort of the margins to the middle. So we really think about, how do we design proactively from the outset with a framework called Universal Design for Learning to make sure that we're proactively thinking about the way we represent information, the way we help people comprehend, the way we allow people to express themselves and demonstrate understanding, and the way people are sort of motivated to engage in learning. And what we find often in the margins is there's no lack of intelligence, values, capability across so many different groups. There's really a narrow avenue to pass through in terms of how we've conceived of intelligence and what we reward in our system. So I guess one thing I would say is kind of applying universal design for learning and this idea of sort of designing for everyone to the big, hairy problems that we have. So I would love to see, how AI gets matched to something like, work that's getting done around creating more socially just assessments. So actually rethinking what we assess, right? And what supports and scaffolds we give people to assess. AI could free us up, right? It could free us up to how many people like spending time focusing on tasks that focus on recall or just really tax their working memory. I have a terrible working memory. That's why I have scratchy notes, right? Most people don't want to be doing that anymore, right? So how can it free us up to do some of the things that actually let us get back to what we're hoping to do in higher education, which is really connect people together to wrestle with tough ideas with people who aren't like them.
All right. So I'm going to pose a question, and anyone can take it first.
Fist bump the whole time.
All right. So how can AI help us realize more expansive goals for student success? Anyone want to take it first?
One more time.
How can AI help us realize more expansive goals for student success? Expand our minds. Can it? Or maybe it can't.
Yes. I think one of the ways, and again, this is not an academic, more of an administrative aspect, is it can help students answer the questions that they need answered. One of the great challenges, particularly in higher education, is that we're organized in a way that's not readily understood by students. You tell them to go see the chair. What chair? What's a chair? Right? They know what a dean is. A dean and a president makes sense. A chair doesn't make sense. A bursar doesn't make any sense. A registrar doesn't make any. A provost doesn't make any sense. And so as we start to talk to the students about, well, I want you to solve your problem, I need you to go see X, having the information available in a way where they can get the information without going to see XY person, I think can be very, very helpful. And so I think we can use AI to meet students where they are, to give them the answers to the things that they need to be successful.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. Anything to add, Isaiah?
I would just add to that, just sort of saying a little bit what I mean about socially just assessment, because I think that really, and that's the work of Sean Bracken, who's a UDL expert, runs the Department of Education at a university in the UK, but has really brought this concept together in terms of thinking about like, what voice do students have and what gets assessed and why and how are we engaging in assessment for social good, right? And that kind of pushes us to think often beyond. And this, I think, one of the flaws with our model of intelligence is so profoundly individualistic, right? But really good thinking never happens just at the individual level, right? It's like you're a good thinking environment. You don't know where your thought ends and someone else's begins, right? You shouldn't, at least. And so I think that idea, right, of actually allowing students to have a much stronger role in co-designing assessments, bringing the assessment into learning as opposed to something that happens like an autopsy after the fact, right? I think is a really important way to expand student success and to put students back into the role of defining what success should look like.
I'm going to respond, and now President Abdullah's comments I want to echo here, because I think there's a great opportunity for AI to empower leaders to make different decisions. Yeah, good to see you. In particular, I think that we have too many things that we do at the college that we've started because someone had a great idea or they knew somebody. We never evaluated. Did it work? Don't know. Have a lot of other things that are working wonders for students. We don't have the resources to scale those. We need to be thinking about our universities, our colleges, as a portfolio of investments. And we've got to call that portfolio. We've got to free up resources. We've got to ask ourselves, what things should we stop doing? What things should we start doing? And what things should we grow? And I think if you do that and you're nimble at that, you're going to be better known to this audience in a very short amount of time.
So I'm just going to say, what are we going to stop doing then?
Oh, there are lots of things.
All right, let's just go through it.
I mean, I've closed probably a dozen academic programs in the past year in order to invest in ones that are really thriving. I'll give you an example from my prior institution. We had 6 bachelor's degrees, teacher prep programs at a 2-year institution. 5 of those had 18 students collectively enrolled, and then 1 had 200 students enrolled, and it was ranked 79th in the state. We closed the 6, poured all the resources into the ranked 79th. It's now the #1 program on value-add learning in the state of Florida. So it's those kind of decisions that I think if you make those, and by the way, they're #1 because of closing achievement gaps and equity gaps. So I'm really proud of that work. We have tons of those examples. On the flip side, another example, right when we went into the pandemic, I had a bunch of people telling me we had to get rid of virtual tutoring. It didn't work. So we have a tool, an impact tool. It uses prediction-based propensity score matching. The results had just come out of that, and they basically showed that it had the same impact on student success as face-to-face ground tutoring. So we almost screwed up, and instead we quadrupled our investment in online tutoring because we had that data. I'm not saying that's the right answer for everyone in this room. That's contextual with my students, the partner I had, and the time. So we always have to be evaluating this and making better decisions.
Can you talk a little bit, President Abdullah, about your student involvement? We're working on a fun project, and the students are really guiding us. I think the student government organization is really invested in the feedback loop of, they've looked at wireframes for a centralized student success project we're working on. And ironically, they want to move fast. You know, we said, we're working on it. It's like, well, if you don't get it up, we're going to do it. And so I think it's really, you know, wonderful to work with your campus. But you talk a little bit about kind of how your feedback loop works with students and sort of, you know, how you're able to incorporate them into these interesting new innovations.
You know, what I find, and I'm sure that my fellow presidential colleague finds the same thing, you know, students are amazing. I mean, and that's why many of us are in higher education anyways, because young people are just amazing. And if you can give them a seat at the table, many of them, not all, but many of them will take that seat at the table very, very seriously and really help to push the institution forward. And so we're fortunate at Virginia State that we try to do the best we can to give our young people a voice, give them a voice to help move forward into the future. I say that the only way that I can remain young is if I keep young people around me to tell me what to do. And so part of, even as we discuss AI here, I'm really speaking the language, trying to speak the language of my students who are telling me, look, we're not going to stop using it. We're not going to stop using it in class. And you can run a report if you want to, but we're going to get around that report. And so how do we embrace where they are and allow them to tell us that? So that's really what we try. I'm sure all of our institutions are really doing that, but we really try to do it at Virginia State.
You have a thought, Sam? Sort of to think about that, you know, our students deserve the best, you know, and they always deserve it. I think our graduation rates could improve. You know, I think, what do you see? You know, we should be targeting a 4-year graduation rate. I think we're fighting for a 6-year right now, but wouldn't it be great if we can get our students out in 4 years with less debt and off into the workforce, building their lives? Is there something you see as promising, given sort of funding limitations, state, federal level? Is there something you've seen, maybe you're not playing with it yet, in this AI sphere that seems like it could move the needle on persistence and graduation with AI that seems promising? This is off script. This was not in our email, so my apologies. I was just feeling the flow there, so
We're back to my falafel.
back to your falafel. I mean, I personally, and I just said in the DataKind presentation, I mean, it seems like a promising initiative. You know, what else are you seeing out there that you're like, hey, if I have time, I'd like to try that? Or I'm freaked out by that, maybe.
I'll tee it up first. So one thing we did, I don't know how AI related this is, but I think a lot about behavioral economics, and I've tried to make the best choice for our students the opt-in decision and force them to opt out of bad choices for them. Not that I want to take them away. They should be able to do that if they choose. But just make it a little bit more difficult for them to do so, kind of thinking about the 401k savings literature, if you will. So we started opting in students into our embedded certificate programs. Didn't give them a choice. They're 100% embedded. We had 191 students when we turned that switch on. I was a little nervous. It was the night before we went on winter break, and I didn't know how students would respond, but we were flooded with thank yous because we were able to award literally thousands of credentials that semester. And students said to us, look, we've been toiling away at your institution for 4 years on a part-time basis, and I've never received anything. Thank you so much. Great Christmas present. So I think it's decisions like that, and that's just one example. Now we have 9,700 students enrolled in those embedded certs. It increased our graduation rate by 238% in 1 year. We can find a lot more solutions like that to improve our success.
I'll take a flyer on it just for fun. You know, to me at Virginia State, there are really 3 kinds of students. You know, there's kind of the extroverted students who are chasing every resource they can get. They're the introverted, very, very introverted students that you kind of got to pull to the side. You see them and you're kind of dragging them along and helping them get their resources. But there's a large group in the middle that if you don't pay attention to them, you won't catch them. And they're not always seeking the resources that they need to be successful. I think using regenerative AI to make sure that students can have answers to their questions in real time when they need them, without necessarily contacting an adult who they don't want to talk to, I think can pay huge, huge dividends. I think there's a group of kids that we're not holding because they're escaping our reach that are interested in getting more information and communicating more, but they would just rather do it on their phone in the middle of the night. And I think that that's the place where we can begin to capture the kind of data that we didn't capture before, and help them in better ways.
I would just add to that. Isaiah, do you want to go ahead?
Oh yeah, I was just wanted to add that I think you're definitely right on that point, because I think that most of my best questions come when I'm like late at night or while I'm doing something else, preparing for the next day, of like, oh, I had this question and I kind of want to answer it now, to go through that train of thought. And I think that having a generative AI solution that's connected to an institution would be a great way of fueling that process and getting new ideas and new solutions.
I'd just add, I think one of the things from, I'm not in a higher ed institution, but I work with a number, and that we've seen as sort of promising is sort of a lot of different people, whether it's ed tech developers, whether it's government, whether it's institutions, actually moving much more towards thinking about inclusion, right, of all populations, thinking about issues like belonging, and really pulling together things like accessibility and AI, right? Pulling together AI and, what do we do in terms of belonging? Thinking about, we had the conversation a little bit yesterday about, different speech patterns. I experienced this with my kid who has articulation issues yesterday using voice to text, and I'm like, this should not be such a frustrating experience for her, right? This should be an empowering tool. And I think we're moving quickly to say, let's not leave people out with this. And I would say from, maybe it's just the people who talk to me, but there's a big, big commitment, I think, to trying to make sure that, that there's responsible use and that it's not used to separate people from others, but it's used to try to include people. And maybe that's too, optimistic, but.
What do you think that needs to be done, though, to make sure, it sounds like things are getting out there that are not built inclusively. Like, what do you, kind of from your perspective at CAST?
I mean, a lot. We're working with, us, Digital Promise, I think Isti, Richard Culato's here, others to sort of try and kind of come up with a product certification process, a sort of a, badging process to say these products have been through, right? Have gone through the paces, not only around accessibility, but other things like what's been done in terms of user experience, co-research, co-design, those types of things. We should start asking for those. I would love to see something like that get into, when the National Ed Tech Plan Higher Ed Supplement comes out, to create also those shortcuts for chief information officers, systems that are buying, so that they don't have to be like, oh, I'm going to go through everything and try and figure it out. And then the problem lands in the lap of a faculty member or a student, which it shouldn't. Those things, right, that vetting should happen at a much higher level. And so we're seeing more commitment to that. And also, it's also, if you look at the trajectory of accessibility, it's gotten much easier. I don't know how many of you run your accessibility checker in PowerPoint. It used to be like, what is this thing it's telling me to do? And now it literally fixes it for you. Mm-hmm. So I think we can build into AI, especially if we do the work of, right, moving quickly to include more people in the, right, what it's building large language models off of, et cetera, to have it self-correct in the right kinds of ways.
Absolutely. Thought, Larry? Saw the mind move.
No, I'm good. I was just nodding in agreement. The accessibility in our LMS has gotten a lot easier. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I think about some of the things, and maybe Isaiah, from your perspective as a student, there's little things that maybe don't get connected on the data side for student success. Maybe it's changing your major as a student. Maybe it's not participating in activities. Can you sort of think of a time where you felt like it would have been nice if someone knew that if they had the data?
Oh, I see. So I think that definitely major changes, because I've seen a lot of students that they'll start in, let's say, because I know more about computer science, and at least our computer science department has like a heavy math component. And so then they do that and they realize like, oh, I kind of really wanted to do like information systems. And so they start to think about how to change that, but they don't know kind of the right process of, one, how, like what that looks like in terms of credits, but also what that looks like in terms of like job outcomes of like who they want to be when they come out the end. So I think, yeah, that information is definitely missing, yeah.
And I think, I was fascinated. We've been sort of digging into this issue of changing major. It tends to overwrite in most student information systems. So most deans, presidents, faculty know that changing major does slow the progression to a degree. But I don't know if anyone, by show of hands, knows exactly what that number is on your campus of how many students this year have changed their major. And it's not to say that it's not the right thing for a student to change a major, but I think there's sometimes, kind of the historic nature of certain systems of overwriting can slow you down of knowing, hey, it would be nice to know that this student has changed 5 times versus just knowing what their current major is and not knowing the sort of data progression of what they started as. But sort of thinking about tools and degree navigation, I feel like those feel like less risky, in the world of sort of thinking about not wanting to pilot with our students, but degree navigation to me feels like a really kind of easy lift for AI. But what do you guys think about those kind of use cases in terms of sort of progression of courses on that sort of registrar, predictive analytics side of, are we going to have enough classes so the student doesn't need to take another year to graduate?
I think that's a great question. I mean, I would love our students to be informed about what's this going to do to your expected completion date, what's this going to do to your financial aid package, what's the cost look like, yep. And so just informing the students so that they can make an informed choice, I agree that would be a great addition.
Still thinking.
I'm not going to do this.
Tried to tee it up to give you time.
So I think actually, how are we on time? We could do questions if we are. If
We can,
have-
but I'll
you
take
got
that one.
a point there?
Yeah, I think that, well, one thing I think that ultimately regenerative AI will have us looking at majors in an entirely different way.
To your point, Larry.
So I think long term, yes. But also, so many of our students who graduate have wonderful careers but aren't necessarily working in the area of their first bachelor's degree. And so how do we get great information to them? I mean, our institutions are geared towards students being in majors because our faculty are very excited about their majors, and we are very excited about our majors. Is there a better way to collect information on our general studies degrees to give students the idea that they can be successful coming out of our institutions with those degrees also, and that those are an option? So I think getting a chance to really learn the student, help give advice that's really student-centered, to help remove some of the biases that we have in our own institutions around certain majors, I think could play a profound role in increasing student success and time to graduation.
If I can just respond to that, we're implementing a tool called Occupational Insight right now that lets us actually collect earnings data and employment stats by program and major and feed that back so that a student has an informed choice, not just about what the labor market data says locally, regionally, but literally from the program you just completed. And I think we owe that to our students, and I'm not aware of many institutions that are providing that level of information right now. So I think that's a key insight. The flip side is that by the time you graduate, that if AI is accelerating change, that data may be out of date. So.
Can I add did you want to go ahead?
No, go ahead.
I just wanted to add 2 things to that I think are really important in terms of people switching majors and pathways. I mean, I think some of that's natural and fine, but I do think we need to reach in much deeper down in the system to provide opportunities for people to have more experience. So, we have a project, we have a multi-generational makerspace in affordable housing, and the whole point of that project was to say, right? We shouldn't have people who get to be consumers and other people get to be creators. There's no reason that some of the AI competencies that people have talked about shouldn't be in that space and give people over time access to walk downstairs and go and, engage with that like they would with anything, right? AI can help with career guidance and simplifying that information about all these emerging careers for people, right? There's a lot of things, I think, that would help people also, and then also the piece of sort of bringing more assessment into learning that would help people maybe think, more critically and not necessarily just a degree navigator, but them really being a partner in that degree navigation because they know more and they're better informed and they're better kind of able to self-assess. They're better able to match what they're doing against what the occupational standards are. And they've had a longer period of time to really explore.
All right, any questions in the audience? We have some mics, right? All right, I see a hand over here.
Thank you. I just want to make first a comment on one of the quotes and then a question. I heard President Abdullah say, our educational system will not survive AI. This type of sentence sort of sounds familiar to me because I guess I remember 10 years ago, people were saying we will not have higher education institutions in 20 years because of MOOCs. And it seems to me that there's a lot of inertia, of resilience to change within the higher education or in the entire education model. So my question to the panel is, if you still think that AI is going to completely change, revolutionize, tear down, whatever you say, the education system, where do you think will the first cracks appear if we are unintentional? And if we're intentional, which brick do you want to change first if we were to rebuild it? Thank you.
Fantastic.
If I could, because it's interesting. I had this conversation in an Uber on the way here. Is Katie Mislet, thank you so much for that. Because she said the exact same thing. She asked the same thing. And what I said was this. One, higher education has certainly proven to be more resilient in the past years. We thought that online education would kill it. We thought COVID would kill it. And it turns out that students, while they don't like going to class in person, they sure like being together in person. And so I think and again, I was being provocative, but I think the way that we save it is that we embrace the part of it that brings the most value, which may or may not be what we've thought historically brings the value, right? And so why didn't MOOC succeed the way? Because people learn well together. Because being in spaces means something. Not that it has to mean everything, but it does mean something. And so what is the thing that when we all went online and some of our students sued us because they said, it's not worth it to take these classes at home, right? What is that value that we see as a country in the education system and in higher education? And to begin to really study that and not make assumptions on what it is, right? Because yes, I ultimately agree with you, right? It will be sustainable, but it won't if we hold on to old values and standards because they should be the ones we should hold on to, as opposed to holding on to what's really there. I don't know if that makes any sense. And thank you. And thank you, Katie. Appreciate you.
I'll tackle that a little bit. So I have an administrative office technologies program. So if you listen to Dr. Deming this morning, he said that was the first occupation that'll go in the next 20 years. So that might be one that we take out.
Might look at the data there.
Yeah, got to have the data to back it up. But I also think we see new investments happening, right? So we've got to make sure that we're aware of where those should be. One area of concern that we haven't talked about in this conference is the threat of cybersecurity with the enhancements to AI. So Audrey, who's sitting here, Ellis from T3 Advisory, and myself did a benchmarking visit last week in Seattle to Everett Community College, where they have an industrial cybersecurity program. It's the first in the country. And what I'm hearing from my advanced manufacturing partners is we need to really harden the shop floor and teach our technicians how to protect those assets because they've all been attacked. So also our technicians and technical education, I don't think is going to go away in the short run. We have to train our graduates to repair the robots, but the robots are a long way, and I know you know a lot more about this than me, but this is what my partners at BMW tell me. They just finished the humanoid testing. You can Google that to see they're putting panels on cars, but that is a long way away from replacing people. And so basically what I hear is if your hands get dirty in your job, you're safe for a while from AI. I think that's a good lesson.
Another question in the back or? Nope. Okay, right there. Coming your way.
My name's Alan. I'm here from Western Governors University. Thank you all for your insight. My question is going back to something else that Dr. Bell, you said. No, it was a really good, good quote here.
Shouldn't have too much fun.
You know, they'd rather ask questions on their phone in the middle of the night versus having to wait, until the morning. It kind of echoes things that we've heard over the course of the last day or so. And I've been thinking about this in terms of the fact that students will want answers on demand, right? You kind of need it when you need it. Right. But I also wonder if there's an element of sort of escaping the vulnerability of asking a question to a person. And so I guess my question, this maybe, Isaiah, I'd be curious your thought here and your experience is like, if people are, students are asking these sorts of questions, they'd rather do it via an AI tutor or something of, some automated tool like that. Is it in a sense, a protective layer from some of that vulnerability? And, is that okay, right? My instinct is you kind of want people to develop the skill of reaching out to other people, but maybe not. I'm curious what you all think.
Yeah, so I think it definitely, because people need to, students need to, get used to, being open and sharing their concerns to, a live person, because in the end of the day, that's what they'll do when they get into their careers. I think that there is a good amount of students, however, that it may not be feasible for them to reach out to a faculty member. For example, like, let's say travel, if they're if they're an online student, or if they have to commute a large amount of time going back and forth between campuses, and they're also working on assignments during that pieces of time, it definitely, there's still a value in having kind of some type of, if not something that's with a live person, at least some kind of generative AI experience that they can use for themselves to be able to still get the answer in a feasible amount of time. But yeah, I do agree with you with that. There definitely should be an emphasis on students being able to have a bit of transparency about things that's going on within them, and if they're willing to be able to share that with relevant faculty, that can probably give a much more holistic response than what generative AI might.
I'd love to tackle that too. I was specifically trying to address the idea of students being feeling vulnerable. And I think that shouldn't stop them from getting the information that they need. And if that's a student learning outcome that we want, that we've decided that we want students to have, then we need to add that to the curriculum in a way to make sure that students get it. So we need to be purposeful about it if we're serious about it. Right. But even if we are, just like students come and don't know math and we teach them math, right? If you're not good at talking to people when you come, it shouldn't be a reason why you don't get the information you need while we continue to help you get there.
And I would push a little on institutions. I think students are customers. They are paying for their education. And I think there is a new expectation with all of the tools that we have in our lives of service. And I think it is a little bit of a different dynamic, I think, in the last 10 years of like, Netflix knows what I want to watch. I could sign a mortgage without seeing a person. I think there's a lot of things we can do in our modern day lives without actually connecting with humans. So I do want to push a little bit that I think institutions are at a point of realizing students want the same type of customer service they get from these pay-by-the-month services at an institution. And if I might put, I think sometimes you don't want to have that conversation where they're dropping your financial aid, and maybe that conversation might put you over the edge. Maybe it is better to self-service. I think there's times where, we have to remember that this is a cost to a student and that their expectation needs to be met. And I think sometimes these tools can be that. We know that consumerism, though they're using AI, so it's being used on us every day to make sure I buy things when I'm on Instagram. But, why can't it be used to make sure that you get the alert done that you have to make sure you close the paperwork gap you might have for students? I think I understand the idea of the teaching community, but I think there is now a different expectation that students have of their institution to serve them.
I just want to add to that comment just real quickly, which is that that's an incredible data source for a leader to use to make an urgent case for change at your institution across the organization and deliver a lot better services where students are asking for it, because we don't always have that information available to us. So.
Yeah, I was just going to add, I think there's also an opportunity to change the way we respond to students. So, my kid does speech therapy, and they use this model called declarative language. So rather than saying, Jane, stop talking so quickly, I can't understand you, you would say, my ears can't keep up, right? Putting it on you. And it seems like, okay, everyone's like, we don't want to coddle students, blah, blah, I get it. But I also feel there's a lot of people who come to higher ed and they have to reclaim themselves as learners, right? David Rose, who founded UDL, said something that I'll never forget. He said, affect gets laid down very deep. And just because you're the teacher in front of them doesn't mean that all the experiences that they've had before don't get filtered through you. They remember you as that other person. So I actually think there's both a need for people to engage more rigorously in higher ed, but also there's similarly at the same time a need for more gentleness with students. And I think training models to do things like use declarative language could be very powerful in enhancing that sense of belonging and welcoming of students.
All right. Mililani. Oh, sorry. Hold on. One and then two. Go ahead, bro.
Oh, okay. Yeah, thank you. So we are referring like more student success, look like all our talk to our focus. And I think a very interesting question arise like when you're shifting or changing majors. And so in today's era, like we try to have major where we have more job market according to, if you use tools and recommend, okay, this is the job area, you're getting more jobs. So these jobs are also keep changing within technologies. And so this is always dilemma for students when they graduate, if they focus on super spatial area. Let's say right now, like I'm telling you this true story, my son graduated PhD with nanophysics. He wanted to do with computer science. I said, no, go to general science and do engineering. And he was really angry with me. He said, where is the job? So, but anyway, so my question is here, is that, we need to learn. We need to learn not only whatever opportunity comes, we should not be focusing super specific in that area. So I'm giving like very quick example. I started my studies nuclear physics. My job was in pharma industry. Nothing to do with physics. I learned all biology, chemistry, microbiology, anatomy, physiology, everything 5 years condensed thing I learned in 6 months. And we adopted. Then I came into industry where I started my own business. And I have no degree in business. And I did very successfully run my business. And then I came to US and I started with teaching physics, but somehow I ended up with computer science. And in the first semester I took operating system class. When I read one sentence, I have to Google at least 15, 16 words, and still doesn't make sense me that, okay, what I'm learning. In the short, that we should not be focused to, or like, you can adapt and change because industry don't expect exactly like what you prepare from schools may not be fit for them. So eventually they will train you. So this is like, I like to see your perspective in this area. Thank you.
All right. And then if you can you pass the mic to Mililani too for next? Anyone want to respond?
I can a bit, because actually I had a question earlier about what would be the first thing to change. Majors.
Yep.
Majors.
The construct of majors.
Yes, that it's kind of in the meat of his question, but universities are typically, even if we move very fast and create a degree program right when it's needed, it takes us 4 years to graduate anybody. So even in the best situation, we're 4 years behind, but generally we're farther behind than that.
Yeah.
And so in order to move faster, first thing would be majors.
And if I flip that question a little bit on its head, you can use data to start to unpack the root cause analysis of the major change. Often it's one of those Everest courses that students are facing, and when they're not doing well in it, they are looking for an out. We can intervene sooner in those, especially higher level math, with co-requisite supports to help those students be successful in those courses and stay on track.
Mililani?
Good evening. Again, my name is Mililani Stewart. I'm a student at Lawson State Community College. And I guess my question is for anyone on the panel. I know we had a lot of conversations around higher ed and AI, but what do you think that looked like for K through 12? Because there's a shortage of teachers. How can we use AI to fill in the gaps where there's a shortage of teachers or even learning differently? I'm just wanting to know if anyone have any thoughts on K through 12, because before you can even get to college, you got to finish those grades, and that can be challenging also. So how do we prepare those students for AI, and how do we fill in the gaps where we obviously can see there's a shortage for teachers, and how do we incorporate that for those grades?
Any thoughts?
I'll just say the way that we help fill the gap that you're referring to with capacity in K-12 is by expanding our dual enrollment efforts, which aligns really well with equity of access. We made dual enrollment free, including books and inclusive access materials. We also removed the AccuPlacer, which was a gatekeeper, and moved to grades, which are a better predictor of student success. That basically increased our share of Black and brown students by 50% in the program. I still have an equity gap there, but I know what the number is. We are laser focused on closing it. And yeah, we've got the biggest program in the state. I want to continue to grow that. I want more students to actually complete an associate degree while they're in high school for free. And I think that will get us to where we need to be.
And by a show of hands, this was our dinner table conversation. Who thinks K-12 is moving faster than higher ed?
Oh.
All right, who thinks higher ed is moving faster than K-12? All right, so there's a lot of abstention. And
Everybody's
all or
moving
not.
slow, right?
I mean, all right, so who thinks K-12 is moving faster than higher education? K-12, K through 12 move. Okay, we got it. And then, all right, so the rest of y'all are on the next side. I'm going to assume
I'm
by,
not sure that's
President Gallo, hand up.
I'm not sure
Got
that's
you.
true.
So having an 11 and 12-year-old, I think the kids are moving fast.
So we're associating our children with, maybe that's with my 5, we're associating the children with the system since they are moving faster. Maybe that's it.
Your president's a very nice woman. I know her very well. So first, I wanted to say that. Second, I'm not sure I got an answer. I don't think any of us have an answer for your question. But I'm excited about the idea of young people being able to learn at their own pace, about being able to challenge themselves in subject matter that they're very interested in. And so I think that it will be quite transformational for K through 12 education. I just don't know how or how we get them ready for it. But I'm excited about that. Different learners learning different ways.
Awesome.
One thing I think Dean Bridget Terry Long said yesterday, which I think is important, about the equity in terms of who gets access in the preparation. And that's where I think that if there's work done to sort of build into programs, so right, the Workforce Innovation Opportunity Act has a ton of funding around pre-employment services for students with disabilities, but also lots of other populations. Youth Build, Job Corps, those are programs that primarily serve low-income youth disconnected from both educate. Like, those are places, TRIO programs, those are all places where we should be really strongly advocating for AI literacy and really investing significant resources to make sure that, one, for students, there's not a one-size-fits-all, because a lot of those students have not done well with that anyways, but also we're making sure that they're not getting to a college application and all of a sudden they haven't been taught the tricks of the trade and they're getting, I think that's a real risk. So I think we got to prioritize certain programs and really invest in AI literacy.
All right. Well, thank you to our panelists.
Thank you.